The day my baby sister turned 1 month old, my father took her out for the celebration. A speeding car struck them on the road. At the hospital, doctors rushed to save their lives, but my mother made a different choice. A woman worth hundreds of millions, she had enough influence to summon the city's finest specialists with a single phone call. Yet she ordered nearly every available doctor to stay by another man's bedside. Her first love. The reason? He had seen the blood from the accident and claimed he felt faint. So while doctors comforted a man with a stomach ache, my father and infant sister lay unattended. That night, they died. And somehow, it became my fault. I was 6 years old, too young to defend myself, too young to understand why everyone suddenly looked at me with hatred. They threw me out of the house like unwanted trash. No one came after me. No one cared whether I lived or died. 20 years later, I was no longer that abandoned child. I was Bass Swanson, president of Bedrock Technologies, the man who stood at the top of a $10 billion empire. Life had a strange sense of humor. The annual conversion review was underway when my assistant entered my office carrying a stack of intern files. He placed them carefully on my desk. Mr. Swanson, these are the final candidates. His finger tapped the first folder with obvious admiration. This one is exceptional. Abner Sullivan. Nearly perfect evaluations. Outstanding performance metrics. Every supervisor praised him. I opened the file absent-mindedly. Then I reached the family information section. The room suddenly felt colder. 2 familiar names stared back at me from the page. Names that had haunted me for 20 years. Names I had tried to bury. Yet somehow, I remembered every letter. After a long silence, I closed the folder. Bring all 5 candidates in. My assistant blinked but nodded. Soon, the conference room filled with nervous anticipation. One by one, I handed out full-time employment offers. Smiles appeared. Relieved sighs followed. Hands trembled with excitement as contracts were signed. Then only one folder remained. I lifted my eyes. Across the table sat Abner Sullivan. Confident, composed, already certain of victory. I slid a document toward him. It wasn't a contract. It was a termination notice. Abner Sullivan, I said calmly. You didn't pass. The room froze. The other interns stared in disbelief. My assistant nearly choked. The silence was so heavy that even the hum of the air conditioner sounded deafening. Abner looked down at the document. For a brief moment, surprise crossed his face. Then it disappeared. Interesting. He didn't panic, didn't beg, didn't look crushed. Instead, he opened the folder he'd brought and calmly laid out several reports. Mr. Swanson, he said evenly, during my internship, I independently managed 4 projects and led 2 major initiatives. He slid performance charts across the table. My client renewal rate was 100%. His voice remained steady, professional, controlled. I received top evaluations for 2 consecutive quarters. He looked directly into my eyes. My performance ranks first among my cohort. A brief pause followed. If you're terminating me, I'd like a reason. There it was. Not fear. Not sadness. Pride. The kind of pride that came from growing up protected. Cherished. Certain the world would always reward him. The same pride his father once wore. I leaned back in my chair. There is no reason. For the first time, his expression cracked. What? This is my company. I folded my hands together. If I decide to let you go, I don't need a reason. The room grew uncomfortably quiet. Abner's jaw tightened. Then he laughed. A cold, humorless laugh. Mr. Swanson, that's workplace bullying. He closed his folder sharply. If this becomes public, it could seriously damage Bedrock's reputation. A faint smile touched my lips. I'm not bullying you. His eyes narrowed. If this feels like persecution, perhaps that says more about your conscience than mine. The word struck harder than I intended. A flicker of genuine anger flashed through his eyes. My assistant quickly leaned toward me. Mr. Swanson, he whispered urgently, please reconsider. His performance really is exceptional. The board already reviewed his background. I said nothing. My assistant continued. His mother is Kay Sullivan, CEO of Sullivan Group. I cut him off. Then I looked directly at Abner. That's your mother, isn't it? Immediately, confidence returned to his posture. His shoulders straightened. A trace of pride appeared. So you've heard of my mother? Of course I had. Far more than he could imagine. Then you understand, he continued. Keeping me here would benefit both companies. One day, Bedrock and Sullivan Group could become strategic partners. He spoke as if he were offering me a treasure, as if I should feel grateful. 20 years ago, perhaps that name carried real weight. Today, Sullivan Group was merely surviving on the remnants of its former glory. Still influential, still powerful, but no longer untouchable. I pushed the termination notice closer. No need. His smile faded. I don't want anything from the Sullivan family. The confidence vanished completely. You may leave. At last, his composure shattered. His face flushed red with fury. He snatched the document from the table. Fine. His voice trembled with anger. Mr. Swanson, I'll remember this day. He glared at me. I hope you won't regret it. Then he stormed out. The conference room door slammed hard enough to shake the glass walls. Afterward, I dismissed the remaining interns. My assistant stood there looking utterly confused. Mr. Swanson. He hesitated. Why would you do that? Sullivan Group may be declining, but they're still one of the city's largest corporations. Publicly humiliating the Sullivan heir isn't exactly wise. I gave him a look. That was enough. He immediately fell silent. Make copies of every project Abner Sullivan touched during his internship. My assistant frowned. You think there's a problem? Just do it. That afternoon, he delivered the files to my office. I had barely opened the first report when my office door was shoved open without permission. A man strode inside. Arrogance practically radiated from him. Custom-tailored suit. Luxury watch worth more than most people's annual salary. The smug confidence of someone accustomed to getting whatever he wanted. Bill James. 20 years had treated him well. Unfortunately, he dropped into a chair without invitation and tossed a Maybach key onto my desk. The metallic clink echoed through the office. So, you're the one running this company. His voice dripped with contempt. Who gave you permission to fire my son? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I calmly poured myself a cup of tea. The fragrant steam curled upward between us. Finally, I looked at him. Mr. James. His eyebrows lifted. Looks like life has treated you well. For a moment he paused. His eyes searched my face, trying to place me, trying to remember. But he couldn't. Of course he couldn't. 20 years ago, I had been a skinny 6-year-old boy abandoned at the gates of his mansion. Now, I was one of the most powerful businessmen in the country. People like him never remembered the lives they destroyed. Once he failed to recognize me, his arrogance returned. Since you know who I am, let's skip the nonsense. He leaned back comfortably. Abner is my son. His tone carried absolute certainty. The fact that he's willing to work here is already an honor for your company. I almost laughed. But frankly, someone of his caliber shouldn't start as an ordinary employee. He pointed toward the door. Put him directly into management. I stared at him, then smiled. A dangerous smile. Is he worthy of that? The office temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Bill's expression darkened instantly. What did you say? I placed my teacup down with deliberate care. I said your son isn't worthy. He exploded to his feet. Listen carefully, Swanson. His face twisted with anger. My son working here is doing you a favor. His finger jabbed toward me. Do you have any idea how many deals the Sullivan family closes every year? His voice grew louder. One word from my wife and your company could earn enough business to secure its future for decades. I watched him rant, watched the veins bulge in his neck, watched the entitlement spill from every word. And I couldn't help wondering, had he worn that same expression 20 years ago? The day he helped drive my father out. The day he destroyed my family. I finally interrupted. Sorry.
My voice was calm, cold.
A partnership with the Sullivans is beneath me. The room fell silent. Then I pressed the intercom button. Send 2 security guards to my office. The door opened less than a minute later. 2 guards entered. Bill stared at them in disbelief. Before he could react, they stepped forward and firmly grabbed his arms. Bill's eyes widened in disbelief. Men like him weren't accustomed to being touched against their will, much less thrown out of an office. The security guards had barely reached the door when it burst open again. A young woman in her early 20s stormed inside like a hurricane. Designer labels draped every inch of her body. Her handbag alone probably cost more than most people's yearly salary. Fury twisted her beautiful features as she marched straight toward me. Who the hell do you think you are? She shouted, pointing a manicured finger at my face. Putting your hands on my father? The guards instinctively paused. If you keep this up, I'll have my mother shut this trash company down by tomorrow morning. I looked at her carefully. The resemblance was undeniable. Bill's eyes. Bill's brow. Bill's arrogant expression. It was all there. And suddenly, another image flashed across my mind. A rain-soaked night. The sound of sirens. My father's lifeless body. The tiny infant who had only been alive for 1 month. My baby sister. For a moment, my chest tightened. If she had survived, she would have been around this girl's age now. 21. Maybe 22. Maybe she would have laughed loudly. Maybe she would have fought with me over trivial things. Maybe she would have called me Big Brother. Instead, she had died before she ever learned to speak. I slowly returned my attention to the furious young woman before me. "This is your daughter?" I asked quietly. "Of course she is," Bill snapped. "Yvette Sullivan. My daughter with K." I stared at them for several seconds. Then a small smile appeared on my lips. "Good." Yvette frowned. "What does that mean?" I stood and adjusted my suit jacket. Then I looked directly into her eyes. "Go home and tell your mother something for me." The room grew silent. I'd love to see how she plans to deal with me. The guards resumed escorting Bill out. Yvette struggled and cursed the entire way. The office door slammed shut behind them. At last, silence returned. I sank back into my chair and grabbed the glass of water sitting on my desk. The water had already gone warm. I drank it anyway. This was only the beginning. I had known that from the moment I opened Abner Sullivan's file. The ghosts of 20 years ago had finally come knocking. This time, I intended to answer. "Pull everything you can find on Yvette Sullivan." My assistant immediately nodded. "Detailed. Very." The report arrived less than an hour later. I flipped through the pages. Yvette Sullivan, 21 years old, senior university student, current intern at City Television Station.
I paused.
The TV station. My fingers tapped against the desk. After several moments of consideration, I picked up my phone and dialed a number. The call was answered almost immediately. Base. A warm female voice came through the speaker. "Why are you calling this late? I thought you'd be buried in work today." A small smile touched my lips. Charlotte Joyce, my girlfriend, and one of the station's most respected producers. The last person I wanted dragged into my personal vendetta. Unfortunately, she was also the only person who could help. "Do you have an intern named Yvette Sullivan?" There was a brief pause.
"Yeah."
Sullivan Group's heiress, apparently.
"Why?"
I stared out the office window. The city lights glittered below. "How well do you know her?" "Not well." Charlotte hesitated. "Base, what's going on?" I rubbed my forehead. "I don't want to see her there anymore." Silence. Long silence. Charlotte knew me too well. She knew I never used my position to settle personal grievances. Not once in all the years we'd been together. Which meant if I was asking this now, something serious had happened. Finally, she spoke. "What did the Sullivan family do?" I lowered my voice. "I just don't like them." The answer was technically true. It simply left out 20 years of pain. Charlotte didn't press further. "Okay." The response came without hesitation. "I'll handle it." Some of the tension in my chest loosened. "I'll pick you up after work." "Deal." That evening, I drove to the television station. The sun had already begun setting, casting orange light across the glass exterior. I had barely stepped out of my car when shouting erupted near the entrance. "On what grounds am I being fired, Yvette?" 2 security guards held her back as she struggled furiously. Her face was bright red with rage. "Because I cursed out a few coworkers?" She laughed bitterly. "Do you people know who I am?" Several employees exchanged awkward glances. One staff member tried to calm her. "Miss Sullivan, please. You assaulted a colleague." "I barely touched her." "You slapped her." Yvette rolled her eyes. "Same difference." The employee looked exhausted. "We're simply following station policy." "Policy?" Yvette barked out a laugh. "I am the policy." The surrounding crowd visibly cringed. If that little nobody isn't fired today and on her knees apologizing to me, this isn't over. At that moment, the station doors opened. Charlotte stepped outside. Her gaze immediately found mine. A smile appeared on her face. Without hesitation, she walked straight over and slipped her arm through mine. "Sorry to keep you waiting." "Not at all." Yvette froze. Her eyes bounced between us. Then realization struck. The expression on her face darkened instantly. "You." She pointed directly at me. "It was you." Her voice rose another octave. "You got my brother fired and now you're coming after me too?" Several people nearby stepped backward. Yvette suddenly broke free from one of the guards and lunged toward me with her hand raised. Charlotte moved before I could. Her expression turned icy. Years of authority settled over her like armor. Get her out of here. The guards immediately seized Yvette again. She kicked and screamed as they dragged her toward the parking lot. Swanson. Her voice echoed across the entrance. You think you can touch the Sullivan family? My mother won't let this go. You'll regret this. Her screams gradually faded into the distance. Charlotte exhaled heavily. Then she turned toward me. Concern filled her eyes. Kay Sullivan has been one of the most respected names in this city for years. She studied my face. What happened that made you go this far? For a moment, I almost told her. About the accident. About my father. About my sister. About the 20 years of resentment that had never truly faded. But the words wouldn't come. So I simply shook my head. Not yet. Charlotte didn't push. She squeezed my hand instead. Later that night, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I answered anyway. The moment I heard the voice, I knew exactly who it was. 20 years had passed. Yet hearing her voice still felt like someone tearing open an old scar. You're the Swanson running Bedrock Technologies? Kay Sullivan. Even through the phone, her tone dripped with superiority, as though she had already decided whether I was worthy of her attention. That's me. Who gave you the nerve to go after my children? I laughed softly. A cold, humorless sound. Miss Sullivan, I think you've got it backwards. Silence. Sullivan Group has already been pushed aside by the market. I leaned back in my chair. Bedrock operates in an entirely different league. My voice hardened. Why would I waste my time targeting a failing company? For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she laughed. The sound was just as cold as mine. Very bold. Her voice sharpened.
Young.
Successful. Reckless. A pause. You clearly have no idea who you're dealing with. Maybe. You think Bedrock is untouchable? Her words dripped with menace. Let's see how long that confidence lasts. I'll be waiting. The line disconnected. She moved fast. By the next morning, my assistant rushed into my office, looking pale. Mr. Swanson.
He shoved his phone toward me.
You need to see this. I looked at the screen. Trending topic number 3. Bedrock Technologies president's shady private life exposed. My eyes narrowed. Anonymous accounts had flooded social media overnight. Posts questioned how someone my age had become president of a multi-billion-dollar company. Rumors spread that I had powerful political backers. Others accused Bedrock of exaggerating its technology and misleading investors. The attacks were coordinated, professional, expensive. Exactly what I expected from Kay Sullivan. Several partners have already called. My assistant said nervously. They're concerned. Before I could respond, someone from public relations burst into the room carrying a laptop. It's worse than that. He opened the screen. Abner Sullivan released a video. I took the laptop. On screen, Abner sat before a camera. Perfect posture. Perfect lighting. Perfect expression. Every detail carefully crafted. He presented report after report from his internship. I completed all of these projects personally, he said calmly. My performance ranked first among all interns. His voice softened slightly. Yet Mr. Swanson terminated me publicly, without explanation. Then came the final blow. His eyes reddened just enough to appear sincere. It was only afterward that I learned 2 female interns had private contact with Mr. Swanson. A calculated pause. I don't want to make accusations. The screen shifted. Photos appeared beside him. One of the interns. Then another. Perhaps the facts can speak for themselves. The video ended. My assistant slammed his hand against the desk. This is ridiculous. His face was red with anger. One of those interns worked in administrative support. She wasn't even competing against Abner. The PR director looked ready to faint. Public opinion is turning against us. He swallowed hard. Everyone is calling it workplace favoritism. I nodded thoughtfully. Then we should respond. Relief flooded their faces. Until I continued. File a lawsuit. The room fell silent. What? Abner Sullivan knowingly spread false statements that damaged both my reputation and Bedrock's. I stood. Sue him for defamation. The PR director nearly dropped the laptop. The lawsuit sent the Sullivan family into chaos. Within days, Kay Sullivan arranged a live televised confrontation. Then she sent a message. A challenge. Did I have the courage to appear? I was about to accept when Charlotte rushed into my office. Base don't. She closed the door behind her. The host has already been bought. My expression didn't change. The panel guests too. She looked genuinely worried. They've scripted the entire program. The second you walk onto that stage, they'll attack you from every direction. I listened quietly, then asked a single question. Can you get me access to the control room? Charlotte blinked. That's what you're worried about. Can you?
After a moment, she sighed.
Yes. I smiled. That's enough. I picked up my phone and sent one message. I'll be there. Then I walked into the restroom. The mirror reflected a man in a dark gray suit.
Calm. Composed.
Patient. 20 years. 20 years since my father died. 20 years since my sister was taken from me. 20 years of waiting. I touched the edge of the sink and stared at my reflection, at the man I had become. Then I spoke softly to the empty room. Dad. My voice was barely above a whisper. I finally made it here,